All right, so for problem 2 on worksheet 1.1, we've got Davante Adams, and he's going south from Green Bay. He leaves Green Bay at 8 a.m., and then he gets to Port Washington at 9:30. So the first part of his trip, nice and squeaky, takes him an hour and a half. Then he realizes that he forgot his cleats, and so his wife brings his cleats from Green Bay and meets him in Manitowoc. So he goes back up to Manitowoc like that. So the first question asks, what is his final position? And his final position, again, is just the place that he ends up in. We can either describe that with the name of the town or the mile marker. So that's Manitowoc. Manitowoc. Or mile marker 149. What was his final distance? And so again, for this, we're going to have to break up the first part of his trip and the second part of his trip, and we have to find out how far did he travel for each part. And it doesn't matter that he started by going south and ended by going north. So we're going to absolute value each part of his trip to make sure that we're not taking the direction into account. So his first trip, he ended up in Port Washington. So that is mile marker 100. But he started in Green Bay, which is mile marker 180. And then we're going to add on the second part of his trip where he ended up in Manitowoc, or 149. And he started in Port Washington. So notice real quick, 100 minus 180, this is going to be negative 80. But because of the absolute value, we're going to make that a positive 80. Because that first trip was 80 miles in length, even though he went south. And so if we made it negative 80, that would be taking the direction into account. But distance doesn't take that direction into account. So we've got positive 80 miles plus 49 miles to give us a total of 129 miles. And the last question says, what is his final displacement? And so for that, we're going to use the displacement equation, which is the final position minus the initial position. The final position is Manitowoc. So we're going to say 149 minus the initial position, which was Green Bay, or 180. And so here, there's no absolute value because we want to keep track of whether or not Davante Adams' overall change in position was south or overall change in position was north. So this is going to get us a negative answer, which is negative 31 miles. And another way to write this, or another way to understand this, would be he traveled 31 miles south. Or really, he ended up 31 miles south of where he started, because he traveled a full 129 miles. But if we didn't take into account this stop in the middle, he started in Green Bay, and then he ended up 31 miles south of where he started overall in his entire trip. And that's his displacement.